All right. So I think what I'll do, I'll probably record some sort of intro for this later, just so I can jump into the meat. Um, so our prompt for this week is undersea cables. And specifically what that's referring to is the network of undersea telecommunications cables that are stretched sort of across most of the world's oceans. Um, and our job is to write a short science fiction story between, let's say, 750 to 1250 words. That's a very loose window, but it's usually my starting point. Um, that takes this idea and kind of examines it, explores it, expresses it, right? Um, Now, before I started recording this, I did do a little research, of course, about undersea cables. And, I found a very interesting map. If you ever have the time, you should definitely look up the map of undersea cables. It kind of boggles the mind, actually. Um, Sort of the size of these things. They're not particularly large in terms of their width. They're a couple inches thick, a foot thick. They're big for cables, but what really is amazing is the length of them. You stretch a cable all the way from, say, like New York to London, and it's only a foot thick, but think about all those miles under the sea and like how heavily insulated it needs to be to keep the electrical signal. There's a lot of engineering kind of magic in these that's pretty amazing. Um, I don't know the degree to which that's going to make it into any story that I write, but I do want to just share the experience of looking at this map and realizing that I would almost call them mega structures. That's what I'm saying. There's something pretty amazing about it. Um, but anyways, to like kind of come at a jumping off point, I usually like to start my stories with a little bit of sort of idea scaffolding, right? So may come into, apologies, let me come into the dock. So, we have undersea cables as an idea, as sort of the fundamental start of this. Um, and you notice I'm using these sort of double brackets. I tend to use these in my scaffolding process because I use characters that I'm, like such as brackets or other things that I'm unlikely to use for other reasons. So when I want to find and replace or like test stuff later, it's very easy to kind of go through and find them again. Whenever I have sections that I haven't filled in yet, I do something like this, create a little kind of double box that I then find and fill in or just use as a placeholder. But anyways, we have the idea of undersea cables. Now, when I got this prompt a few days ago, and I've been sort of ruminating on it, one of the first things that jumped into my mind was nuclear war. Now, why is that? Um, Sort of this idea that if there was some sort of like nuclear holocaust that completely scoured the surface of the earth. And I'm actually like I'm going to change the title of this doc to Scorched Earth because that's I think a better title. And it has a lot to do with some of the themes I've thought about exploring. So nuclear war, it would completely like glass the surface of the earth, kind of irradiate everything, erase all life, all traces of human civilization. But at least as far as I understand it, the deepest undersea cables would remain sort of untouched. They wouldn't be destroyed by this event. They would simply continue to exist under the sea and they wouldn't really connect to anything anymore, right? So I like the idea of all these cables survive, but no longer connected to anything, right? And so what I'm going to do, I want to start capturing that language already, right? So like loose strands or like another sort of image that's very strong in my mind because like undersea cables they're almost like nerve endings, right? It's like untethered neurons sort of weakly drifting in the deep. I like that image. I've just sort of had that idea, right? And I'm probably going to get a few more of these as I continue to work, but we'll just start with the image. Now, when I was thinking about this idea, like, so these cables survive, they're no longer connected to anything. Sort of last evidence of human civilization. You'll have to forgive my dyslexia a little bit. But it's the last evidence of human civilization. And it's sort of interesting to me that the last evidence is our attempts to talk to each other. Okay. So when I had that thought that like the last part of us on this earth is our perhaps failed attempts to talk to each other, my immediate sort of follow-up idea is what were we saying, right? Now, realistically, what we'd probably be like saying a lot of logistical things, a lot of, and these are cables that carry, so many messages. Like I do think that trying to accurately capture the final moments is almost like a bankrupt exercise. And I think that sometimes you have to sacrifice reality in favor of poetry. So, like, what would some really meaningful final messages be? Well, when I think about like the whole context of nuclear war, like I was saying, like the first thing that comes into my mind is something along the lines of like, I'm sorry, right? Or I'm sorry, like that. So what I want to do is I want to really quickly, again, like I want to throw together a bunch of little messages, like maybe something like I didn't mean it. And you can see that these are starting to take on like kind of a different shape than their original logistical thing. Like it doesn't have to be like this. Because again, I want to lean into this idea of like final desperate attempts at communication, right? You know, I don't want something like, oh, please don't bomb our city. Like that's very like banal in a way. You don't have to do this. Like I want something more like tender and like something that hits a little closer. And maybe you can see like there's something that's starting in, we could do something different. There's something that's starting to sort of happen in my head as I'm writing these down. You see the pattern that's starting to emerge, right? Like there is, or like we could, yeah, about this one? We could try something else. And I don't know that all of these are necessarily going to survive into the final product, but these are just like I'm building up my resources. Here's one. Here's one. Please don't do this. This one is going to be useful. Please don't do this. Again, yeah, definitely. I doubt I'm going to use all these. Like, I'm begging you. That's a potential one. Uh, oh, here's one. This one's actually very good. I wish I could take it back. Or like something on the lines of like, I wish I could do things differently. Let me I wish I could do things differently. Just in case I want to swap that out or like supplement it. And then we have, what should I have? Okay, I know. Here's one. I don't want things to end this way. And I think that's like a long enough list for now. But like, so we have these little like snippets of communication that I imagine kind of like the last few seconds were like, sort of my invention of it. Um, and you might sort of get the same feeling from these that I do, is that they sort of describe the last moments before an apocalypse, but they also feel kind of like a relationship, don't they? Right? Like I didn't mean it. Please don't do this. I'm begging you. I wish I could take it back. Like that one especially jumps out to me. And so I'm wondering like how much like allegorical work I can do with this. Um, something along the lines of like we're kind of doing like multiple layers. We have number one, this idea of, buried undersea cables and final messages. Number two, we're kind of having this allegory of like a couple in their final moments together. And like sort of the idea of scorched earth is like a destroyed relationship or like like people talk about like like when I break up with someone it's scorched earth, right? So I like, plus it's like the idea of like a scorched planet after like a nuclear detonation, right? Let's actually get some, let's see, what are some images that we can grab, like dust and glass? There you go. So dust and glass, um things that used to be trees or look like they used to be trees, or at least look more that way than any of the other things you can pretend to call left over if you want to, right? So I'm going off of like rhythm and feeling. Like, what else? Let's think some more. Oh, it's kind of cute. What about like the deserts never noticed anything at all? No, I say that like actually like deserts have living things that would have been like irradiated and like there's a few layers to like why that's not really true, but again, poetry. Um, let's see, like, do we want some like craters? The craters are still glowing temperatures that only the satellites can still see. So that doubled still, right? I'm doubling that. Um, Still glowing. How about there's still because I want to get the idea of radiation in there, right? So glowing is like the heat after the detonation. They're still singing. I like I've always enjoyed sort of the conflation of radiation with music. It's a thing I've used in other stories, not for any particular reason. It's always felt right to me that radiation is like music. So they're still singing in tones that only a Geiger counter can hear. That's a little, I think that's slightly flat. I'm gonna leave a note to myself. Maybe like the Geiger counter thing, I'm not particularly happy with that. It does feel a little more on the nose than I would usually like it to be. So I may come back to that. Uh, Let me make a note. Relationship fall apart. Let's keep sort of gathering some bits. One thing I want to do is come up with like so like this story, like stories take different forms, right? When you have a piece like this, it could very much be like a narrative that focuses on a singular character, they go to a place, they do a thing. Like a lot of stories take on that kind of more traditional structure. Um Sometimes you could have a series of characters. I think in this case, I'm much more interested in like an image or like a slice of a moment, you know? Um and I'm sort of wondering like because I have these cables that aren't connected to anything. I have this planet that's like irradiated. There's nothing alive. Maybe there's still like fish in the ocean. There probably are, but I'm not thinking about that yet. Let me make a note of that. You could probably do something interesting with that. One of my early ideas was whether or not like electric eels or other animals that have like some sort of electroreception are like listening in on our phone calls through the cables as they swim by. But the problem is I've already done a story that's not entirely dissimilar to that. So as cute as I found the idea, I did decide to drop it. But the idea that there's still maybe fish down there could come up later. Um, but again, so we have this image again of these loose strands, untethered neurons of connections, like so disconnected old connections. The lines don't come from anywhere anymore, and they don't reach anywhere anymore. That should be a comma. They don't reach anywhere anymore. But I want to do a little bit more with that, right? Like, so they don't come from anywhere, they don't reach anywhere. I imagine that like the loose ends of them are probably being damaged by like seawater. There's a lot of, again, technical aspects here that I'm going to very deliberately ignore. I'm going to think in my head that actually these telecommunications cables are still theoretically functional. Like I have this idea of like, could you still send a message along one of these cables if you had like some way to like connect it, right? Um, and I don't know like the actual technical specifics of something like that, but I can imagine it at least being sort of possible. And I like this idea of like after humans are already gone, there's some sort of ghost signal or something that like bounces around the world, right? So let's think about that, like a ghost signal. And I think like when I talk about a story that like crystallizes around an image or a moment, I think maybe I'm interested in the moment that this ghost signal appears for a second. Like this weird little, you know how like after someone dies and like they're brain dead, you can still get like residual nerve activity or you know, it's kind of like that, right? That's what I'm talking about. Um that like post-death nerve activity. So I'm wondering what could cause, I mean, you could have like an electrical storm, but I that doesn't feel my instinct. So what my instinct tells me, something to do something to do with radiation. One thing I know about radiation is that it actually messes with electronics, right? Um, like powerful like radioactive particles can flip bits in computers. They can mess up all sorts of stuff. And I wonder if maybe like a powerful enough ion from like this irradiated post-nuclear landscape above the surface. If a powerful enough ion, kind of like those muons that come down from the stratosphere, right? And like impact, if we have a powerful enough ion and it like kind of impacts one of these cables, would it like be enough to like create like a little bit of like a voltage that goes along that? Maybe. There's sort of like an idea of that. What would that be like? Let's go down to like here. The Geiger crackling pyre. See, now there you can use Geiger, right? Like that's more of a circumstance that like that word works. It's more like when you say like the Geiger counter, like that feels lame. I do think I'm gonna come back to that. Spark, it leaps off from the ground. I think it leaps off. Geiger crackling pyre and tunnels its way like particles do through the dirt and through the air and through. See, what I want to do really quickly, I want to do through the air. So I've named two like very like sort of tactile real things. But with this kind of writing, I want to depart from the physical every once in a while. Like tunnels its way like particles do through the dirt and through the air and through regret. Like not that, like not literally through regret, but like through something that like something shouldn't be tunneling through, right? And I'm gonna leave a like a spot for that. Abstraction through the briny seawater down to the midpoint of what used to be a conversation. The midpoint. Is it rubber insulated? It's probably like double, let's just say double insulated. I know I was looking at a picture. I forget like what the materials were, but I was looking at a picture of one of these cables. I can come back to this later and make it more accurate, but I was looking at a picture of one of these cables and it had like a lot of insulation because they don't want the electrical signal to like bleed out into the seawater. So I'm just gonna say double insulated. It's probably even more insulated, but let's just say double because it feels good. Conversation. Okay. So let's pause for a moment. Insulated midpoint used to be a conversation. Um, and then I want to create the feeling of like the impulse, right? So I'm not having it hit at the end of the cable. It's like hitting right in the middle. And I like the image of kind of this impulse heading off in both directions at once. Like I like that imagery. How do I construct that? I need to create some, I think that's one that needs to be like a visual metaphor, right? But how do I do that? I know. Okay, so this is kind of a complicated idea, like because I want to start pulling in the idea of relationships, and I need to create like a visual metaphor. So I like the idea of like creating this like subtextual layer, or not subtextual, that's not correct. This like secondary textual layer of like a couple, right? Um, sorry, whose foot it was which came clattering down halfway the row of dominoes, right? Is dominoes spelled like that or is it like this? Dominoes, pulse, a wave of problems in each direction. I forgot to grab the milk on the way home. Cause and effect? Question mark. I like that kind of like weird thing where it's like I forgot to grab the milk because I was distracted. Because my thoughts were distracted. I felt like my thoughts were distracted by what you'd said to me about me on our usual phone call during my lunch break. Without the milk, you can't. So what is it that you can't do without the milk? Just like a quick idea. What do you need milk for? My first, it's funny. I think of In the Night Kitchen by Maurice Sendak. I'm like, milk for the morning cake, but that's it's not it at all. Um, not the milk. You can't start on the batter for the brownies for tomorrow's PTA meeting. You can never rely on me. That's what you said at lunch. Or did that actually come afterwards? Does it matter? The pulse travels and travels. Here, let me make this a new paragraph. This feels like a new paragraph. Whoops. Ah, always so clumsy. The pulse travels and travels till it reaches. Okay, let's do something interesting with this. And just and then it sputters away into the seawater. Ooh, let's make it murky seawater. We need some adjectives. Murky seawater. What used to be London, what used to be New York. A message for both from so I'm not sure what goes here yet. Uh Nobody is listening anymore. And isn't that just the thing? Like nobody's listening anymore. Like that's how relationships are. You see, we can do this cute little like parallelism. And I think that this sort of italicized structure that I'm using here, I may switch this to bold so that I don't get too um fouled up by the italics and quotes later. We'll see. So this, yeah, message for both from what what do I do with that? From the decay of what kind of atom? Because I want to do some sort of like I want to do some sort of like atomic like I feel I don't know nuclear physics as well as, well, I was about to say as well as I should, but I don't really have a reason to. But I feel in my head, I'm gonna, here's what I'm gonna do. Uh, Nuclear decay atom thing. I'm gonna look this up. Like for some reason, my brain is saying strontium, but I have no reason to believe that. So it's whatever atom, and I want to get the one with like, like strontium 230, whatever, like number. So I'm just like making a note for myself to do a little bit of research in a minute. Um, I this is how I usually write, where I like to leave the scaffolding around. See, but it's like so I like this image of a spark, uh, and that lets me write an ending. Also, I can really quickly jump here, right? Because there's kind of this message that comes from nowhere and it goes nowhere. It's like so like the spark comes. I don't know how I'm going to describe that, but I know that after the spark, and then nothing, right? And then nothing. And I like kind of this because this is like this random event, and it's like maybe someday another spark again, and then nothing again. That's how this ends, right? Like there's something like very bleak, right? In both the nuclear sense, the communication sense, the relationship sense. Like there's something about that little like interchange that I think works quite well. Let's see. So we're starting to get a few pieces in place. These quotes, I'm gonna move these around. I do think I like spark from nowhere, really. Nothing to say. Nothing is said, and then nothing. See, I like that. Spark from nowhere, really. Nothing to say, nothing is said, and then nothing. Maybe someday another spark again, and then nothing again. There's something, I think that functions. That functions the way I want it to. Let's see. So I feel I might want to move some things around, right? Like, so this part here probably comes closer to the original, like to the start of the story, right? At this point, like I think that I can get rid of some of these notes. These no longer are needed because we have the ideas of these in our heads now. I don't know if this is the actual opening, this thing with the craters. I don't think it is. Uh, let's cut aside these notes. I want to like add like, isn't that funny? Nothing left to say that there were ever any people here except, ooh. I'm thinking about like sort of like this idea is like I want to use the phrasing nothing left between us. I want to somehow use that phrasing. Nothing left to say. So it's like that funny. Nothing left between us. Nothing left between us. And that's all that's how do I put that? That's like it's the only thing left of us at all. The scaffolding of the idea of maybe definitely just maybe trying to talk to each other. I think untethered neurons probably belongs to loose strands. Oh, wait, why did that happen? Enter the neurons. Copy, paste. There we go. Uh, that could be a semicolon, but I don't think it will be. I think weekly drifting should be drifting weekly. Well, should it weekly drifting? I think usually it would be drifting weekly, but in this case, for some reason, I want drifting to be the secondary idea. Like I want it to come after the weakness because I think these things don't like. I imagine that like ocean currents would drift them out of place, actually. Uh, Actually, there's quite an image in that, isn't there? Sort of the idea that after the end, these like big tangles are like they're losing their original places. I'm choosing, I think, in this moment to ignore that potential image just because it kind of confounds what I have going. But if I choose to do a second or third draft of this later, that's something to really think about. It only frantic clicks. Yeah, this I've said Geiger counter without saying it. I still don't particularly like the language. They're still singing in tones that only sound like frantic clicks when you try to translate them. The chittering of the insects that scientists and also everyone else were always chatting in trivia, how they would survive something like this. Cockroaches would inherit the earth and eat what? Actually, I don't know much about that. I don't know, like, but I like the idea of like it implying that like the cockroaches haven't made it. Let's jump. So like I want to get like kind of an opening. I want to get an opening that like is unexpected. I like the idea of opening with that italic voice from a minute ago that we were playing with, right? And I want to say like in the morning, my elbow knocks the orange juice off the edge of the table as I'm heading for the door. I like that. Heading for the door. And then I want to cut. I want to cut back into like more of the standard text, right? Because this could be the start of like a spat. Um, the place that was called, I don't know, let's everyone's like New York is the first place it's gonna be. Let's pick somewhere else. What's like a weird but not completely impossible first city to get hit in like a crazy nuclear exchange? Let's say is Moscow to Los Angeles maybe? I think that wants to be in quotes. I could be wrong about like the way to approach. Sometimes with names of things, I put them in quotes. Sometimes I don't. Because it's being called Los Angeles, almost as though someone's saying it. I almost want to, so I'm pausing for a second because it's like, I remember the last time I was in LA, it was too hot. I almost want to say the place was called Los Angeles before the signs saying that all melted. Then I want to cut away, be like, how do they not melt in the heat? But this is not a stand-up routine. Yeah, it's the first to be hit. What do I want to do with that? Like, just pause for a second. Oh, oh, dude. Okay. Happened in the dead of night. So wait, so LA is an hour later than the next time zone over, right? So let's say 1 a.m. Make it 1:12 a.m. I like to be specific with time. Let me pause for a second. I'm thinking about like logistics, like how bright um am. I wanted like I think what I want this feeling of like a sunset in a way. Where it's like I enjoy the idea of like if you have a nuclear detonation and you're just far away enough that the curvature of the Earth like like obscures like the bulk of the explosion, would it look like 100 miles to the east? 100 miles to the east. I'm on the phone with her father in where should I put him? Let's put him in New Haven. Who isn't make it long enough to play. So, one of the things, like, I'm pausing for a second because I want to point out something that I'm doing, and I'm not doing it out loud, and I apologize for that. I kind of, when I can, I want to bury stories inside of stories inside of stories, right? I want to like the image that I'm going for is this idea of like seeing a sunset at like 1 a.m., right? But in framing that image, I want to use the opportunity to just tell like a little story because I can. And because I think that like people latch on to that really strongly, even when there's like kind of no like technical or like functional reason for it. I think people like stories so much that if you're always telling stories, they'll always like it. I mean, like that's a little reductive, but in a way, wonders from her balcony, suddenly setting again out of nowhere. Or is it rising at the wrong time in the wrong direction? So what I'm going to do, let's take a second. Like I'm gonna quickly say, I want to follow up with like more italics, start of argument about orange juice, because the italics are going to parallel some sort of like I don't even know if I want to get into whatever political reason is the cause of this nuclear exchange. I like the implication that for some reason the orange juice has caused nuclear warfare. And I want to kind of because that doubles down on the parallel. So I want to stick with that. I don't want to get into the politics of it. I'm going to put in the italics of that in a second. But there's another idea that I want to capture a little bit later, where it's like once so many bombs have dropped, and I'm saying dropped, it's like they're on missiles, but it's fine. When so many bombs have dropped, that life on the surface scientifically over and done with. I don't know why I like within the next few years, but I don't want to do with within. Over and done with over the next few years. Whoever is sitting at the buttons, wherever they are. So it's like I'm pausing for a second. I like the idea that like there's something very human about it where it's like we've so completely destroyed the like just in the first few exchanges of have been dropped back and forth. I think back and forth is important. Like if life on the Earth is doomed anyways, and we have enough bombs to glass the entire surface of the planet, there's something. There is something. I'm gonna say all life on the surface, by the way. There's something human about the idea. It's like we should really bomb every square inch, right? Like it doesn't matter, so we might as well. There's like sort of filling out the coloring book. And I'm gonna say like filling out the coloring book within the last few minutes. And I want to bring it back to like, isn't that so much like us? Never leaving well enough alone. I stomp out of the room because I'm done talking to you, maybe forever. And then, whoops, I come stomping straight back in again because I've thought of something else to say, and I don't want to live with the idea that I haven't said it. So it's like we're really like pulling together the threads of this idea. As much like it's never leaving well enough alone. I might, I like this. I think this is functional. I think that second sentence could be just like the littlest bit better. I'm not sure how. I may leave a little thing here to come back to. Yeah, bombs drop, whoever they are. So let's finish this job, this part right here. So many bombs dropped. With I'm going to have this be like part of another paragraph probably. Typically over and done with over the next few years. Whoever's sitting the buttons wherever they are decides just the same way that you or I or anyone would to systematically glass every other square inch of the planet also. It's all done for anyways. Might as well. I want to maybe might as well fill out the coloring book with the last few minutes. It's like, yeah, it's such a human thing. I want to really capture that, like, few minutes. There's a thorough satisfaction to it. Thorough satisfaction to it. I'm avoiding saying that it's like an OCD thing because it's kind of not, but like there's a thorough satisfaction to it. I might get feedback on that line later. Honestly, I might. Let's jump back into these italics though, because I'm here. I might as well. It's your fault for leaving the glass so close to the edge. It's my fault for not looking where I was going. It's your fault for not warning me. It's my fault anyways, because I never listened. Listen, even if you warned me. It wouldn't have changed anything. It's your fault for always deciding that you think you know me so well. My fault for being so knowable. The orange juice. Oh, yes. Spreads across the floor, seeping into the cracks between the boards. Is that like, would you like, would I say like cracks between the boards or cracks between the floorboards? It's weird because like floorboards are kind of squarish. Don't they feel like square and long? Like, can you just call them boards? I feel like you can. If you can't, this is the worst part of the whole story, and I'll die miserable. It's between the boards. I almost want to like that, like the juice seeping into the cracks between the boards. Yeah, let's start listing cities. Moscow, Beijing, Boston. I'm gonna avoid saying London and New York as I say them later. Chicago, Berlin. There's one. New Delhi. I want to like just a few more of these. Just like I want to feel it's Delhi. I always get that wrong. I want to feel like I've been thorough. You know, let's throw in Cairo. Uh, how about how about Paris? Let's get something in South or Central America. Lima. I don't know why someone would, but let's just assume they would. Uh, Toronto. And I think I want just one more. Uh, I know how to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, one right after the other. Someone with a sense of humor. Oh, no. Someone with something that they like to tell other people is a sense of humor. All right, so how do I want to transition this? I do think I need to get back into the italics just like a little bit longer. I slammed the door behind me. Okay, now I want to quickly and like almost weirdly with like a weird abruptness, I want to introduce like the fundamental topic of this story, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say I slammed the door behind me with enough force to shake thousands of miles of undersea. I know it sounds funny, like of undersea telecommunications cables. 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 You open up, so no, you push open. I think you push open the little mailbox flap and shout after that. What should I say? Just like me? But isn't it just like you? You can never leave well enough alone. There you go. I think that like I can now cut into this. I think I can actually I'm comfortable leaving this. You know, it's not actually that bad. Even now. That's because I want to like create. I think this comes through here, right? I want to come back for just a moment to like these lines, right? She could take it back. I think I wish I could take it back. It's stronger than I wish I could do things differently. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that. What am I gonna do with these? Um, I think the first thing I want to do with these is I do want these in. Do I want these in bold? I do think I want these in bold, just so that I can like, because I'm gonna keep them italicized so that they identify with the italicized sections. I'm gonna start transplanting them. Yeah, I see that. I didn't mean it. So I'm just transplanting these for a minute. And while I do that, I think I like the idea of interrupting the plain text with this one. So I want to find a way to like, identify these more explicitly with final messages, right? What were we saying back and forth in those last few hours? Who's we? Is it us? Is it you and me, the couple? Is it we, the humans? I don't know. I don't know. It's called art, baby. That's how you do it. We were saying back and forth in those last few hours. And here's what I can do. Let's see. I think I want, please don't do this. I like that one. Drop that here. I want like three of these. So it really creates the impression that that's what these are, right? So please don't do this. Let's get rid of that. I'm begging you. I think I want that one because it goes well with please don't do this. I'm begging you, and I want one more. Um, let's look at what we have. I could come up with another one, but I don't want to if I don't have to. The thing is with this, like, please don't do this. I'm begging you. It doesn't have to be, I think it doesn't have to be this way. Yeah, this way. I think I want, please stop. I want to add that. I also like the idea of please don't do this. You don't have to do this. There's something about like having both of those, like back to back, that are kind of like, please don't do this. You don't have to do this. I'm begging you. It doesn't have to be this way. Please stop. I think loose trans untethered like old connections. I think I don't want things to end this way. Belongs at the end. I wish I could take it back. These two are very pointed. These two are very pointed, and they're like their position matters immensely. So I want to leave them alone for now. Let's look at what we have so far. Unit, yada yada. The crater's still glowing. I think I like dust and glass, things that used to be treated as answers, right? Like, let's pause for a second and think about this. I step out of the room, like this part here, right? Like, right? I come back and argue for another hour. Never mind being late for work. I pace left and right. You throw a potted plant at the wall. Start to cry. Yeah, I see like there we go. Now we have the right sort of thing. So I think the desert's never noticed anything at all. I like the idea of the desert never noticed anything at all. Neither did the, what was it I said? The thousands of miles of undersea telecommunications cables. Miles of undersea telecommunications cables. What did they ever notice? They're beautiful on a map, even now. They are. That's the thing about them. They're quite beautiful. Oh, this, yeah, this is like a full paragraph. Fathoms. Fathoms are a unit of depth, right? Fathoms, fathoms of water, shielding them from burst after burst after burst. I want three of these burst of what kind of something light? Let's something light. Poisonous daylight. Poisonous fake daylight. Oh, that's kind of nice. I'm happy even now. Stop. They still work. There's no reason really that they would. Now, I don't know this to be true. I suspect that there may be a lot of science here that could maybe like something about the way they're engineered. I think they probably need this is one of the things that I'm curious about and also don't want to know the answer to on some level because it's more fun to imagine is that like how do you maintain an undersea cable like this if it needs maintenance? You have to like pull it up, maintain it above the water. And also these cables are like continuous or are they in sections? There's a lot of stuff that I don't know. And finding out would almost be painful for me because it would force me to think more. Um, they still work. There's no reason that they wouldn't. There was there was someone to talk someone to talk to. I think that no, I want that to be an M dash again. I'm addicted to M dash. This is my big weakness. Or even no, I don't want to. I don't want to. Pause for a second. Wait, here we go. Okay. Satellites haven't been as lucky. From the sun, and even the Earth. Gone burrowing through all their fine circuitry. Sending volts and amps and startles into all the places they were never supposed to go. Sparks. Stop. Smoldering. Continuing to kill, kill, and kill. The orange juice was my fault. I know that. I'll never say different. How do you spell Albuquerque? I don't want to try to spell that. What's a good city? I need another city I can use. How about Sao Paulo? Particular. See, I think I wish I could take it back to be right here. I think we could do something different. We could try something else or a little too similar. Uh, what do I like? We could try things differently. Maybe try something else. No, no, no. Let's start over. That's the one I like. My word count looking like, by the way. Let's test that super quick. All right, 1030. So we're right within the range. We just have to finish assembling our pieces. A ghost signal down a dead nerve. Just to really drive it in, right? I think I don't want things to end this way. Probably lives here. Because I want to interrupt the again. I like that. I think that lives here. Like go signal down a dead nerve. Let's start over. Spark from nowhere, really. Right, so we're actually almost done with this. Let's see, what's left to do? We have this part. You pretend to call leftover. You want to. The desert's never noticed anything at all. Okay, so I think what I want here, italics, reaction of the neighbors. Uh, let's make these the upstairs neighbors. Neighbors, they've gotten used to this because that leads into the whole desert's never noticed anything at all. Like the upstairs neighbors are used to this. Like it's kind of you know there's like that little parallelism. They uh actually let's make it next door because that way they can like close the blinds. I want them to be able to like do something. Close the blinds and put on some music. I'm gonna put that. I'll formalize that. Put on some music. I'll formalize that in a moment. What else was there we wanted to quickly do? The one with the abstraction. So this is the one. So it leaps off from the Geiger crackling pile of Sao Paulo in particular, and tunnels its way like particles do through the dirt and through the air and through something and through the briny seawater down to the double insulated midpoint of what used to be a conversation. I think halfway along the row of dominoes is what that should be. Um, so we need some sort of abstraction that it can like pass through, as opposed to like a physical thing. Um, I think like stubbornness. I like the idea of like through our stubbornness, but it's like a little that's a little too on the nose. I like okay. All right, here we go. You can just never be wrong. So yeah, I'm sort of mixing like I'm jumping between the A spark. It leaps off from the Geiger crackling pyre of Sao Paulo in particular, and tunnels its way like particles do through the dirt and through the air and through the fact that you can just never be wrong, can you, Valerie? And through the briny seawater down to the double insulated midpoint of what used to be a conversation. Oh, I like that. Is this correct? I'm like, is Domino's, does it have the E? Well, yeah, Google says it has the E. Let's just take it. All right. So, lastly, we have to get this little bit here with the next door neighbors. The next door neighbors hardly react. They've become used to this. They close the blinds. They put on some music. I think that's enough to just completely like I think that's Ghost Signal feels like it wants to be apostrophe. Not sorry, hyphenated. The last thing I want to look up the nuclear, which thing is the nuclear element. It's like uranium. Oh, I should hold on. Like wouldn't nuclear fall? I think it's a uranium one. Hold on. Let me look this up quickly. And then I think we'll be more or less done with this. I moved into a room that has the fan going. I apologize for the change in noise. Let's see. I'm just grabbing my phone to look this up. Radioactive fallout element. I think that's like the proper search. If it's strontium, I'm going to be so proud of myself. Fallout typically contains, ooh, cesium 137. Let's go for that. There's probably like other answers, but cesium is fine by me. Was there anything like to do with I don't know why strontium is so stuck in my head. Does cesium? I think I want to capitalize cesium. I know that it's not really, but in this case, cesium 137. Actually, yeah, let's just go for that cesium. Down to Denver. I want to recapture the idea of drifting one more time. Just like the whole thing, like weekly drifting. Do I want to redo that? Like, where did I have that? Like weekly drifting in the deep, right? Go signal down a dead nerve, weekly drifting in the deep. Do I want to double that? I don't know that I want to double that actually. Maybe it's fine as is. All right, so let's I guess call this a first draft. And thank you for sitting with me while we go through this process. Hope that was sort of fun.